What's up, everybody? It is October 30th, Friday, TGIF. Tomorrow's Halloween, woo! Alright, I was trying to explain the concept of savings to somebody today who just didn't get it. You know, a lot of this stuff is just, you gotta just think it through. You gotta think it through. So like, today we saw personal savings at 2.5 trillion. Now I spoke about this previously. For decades upon decades, personal savings in the United States never really got above 300 billion. Every once in a while, if we ran a big deficit, it would jump to 600 or 700 billion and we'd be like, wow. But because of the stimulus, the COVID stimulus in March, April, that thing jumped to 6.4 trillion. I mean, if you look at it graphically, it's just like almost like a flat line with a huge spike. 6.4 trillion. It's currently at 2.5 trillion. You know, some of that stimulus spending has gone away, right? The government's not sending out those $600 a week checks anymore, etc. But 2.5 trillion is still historically like massive, all right? Again, I mean, we've never been anywhere near that. So a lot of people think that the savings came from, oh, you know, we didn't spend. Nobody was spending. We didn't go to bars. We didn't go to restaurants. I mean, hell, you know, you even have Fed people saying stupid stuff like that. I mean, I talked about Neil Kashkari, who is the president of the Minneapolis Fed, and he was on TV, he was on CBS News saying, you know, one thing that's positive was we have all this savings because we didn't go to restaurants and movie theaters. And I'm like, dude, you know, my spending equates to somebody else's income and savings. Like if I save, if I don't spend, right? If I don't go to a restaurant or a movie theater, then the income to the restaurant owner and the movie theater owner goes down. So his savings goes down. I mean, the guy is running a Fed bank. Now, I could understand where just, you know, lay people who are not into economics, they just think like, hey, we all got to save and then the savings will build up. It cannot. I mean, just by sheer logic, some entity has to spend more for somebody else's savings to increase. And if you're talking about dollar denominated savings, in other words, savings in US dollars, the sovereign, the United States government must, by definition, spend more than it takes away from us in order for our dollar denominated savings to go up. Now, if we as a nation wanted to save, let's say in yen or in Chinese RMB, then the Japanese would have to spend more than they save, or China would have to spend more than it saves, and then we could, you know, save in that currency. But we don't. We save in US dollars, and the dollars come from government spending. That's the only place it could come from. So like all this talk about, you know, when the government spends, it takes away from some other person, like it takes away from rich people or workers, and then it's like a transfer, right, to somebody else. No, it's not. As a matter of fact, you can see that stimulus, it added like 100 billion in wealth to a guy like Jeff Bezos and people like Bill Gates and people like, you know, all the people at the top, you know, Zuckerberg. So it took nothing away from them. It added to them. Unfortunately, it added to them, you know, more than it added to the rest of us. That's the problem. Like, we need some of that. But this concept, and by the way, that it's called the paradox of thrift. Like one person can save or some people can save, but we can't all save at the same time and then expect savings to go up. It just cannot. I mean, where does it come from? Now, people have a hard time comprehending this. The other thing I want to talk about is the debt. Here we go again with the debt. And when somebody says to you, you know, we got 27 trillion in debt, very simple question I would pose to them is who owns the debt? Who owns it? You know, they might say China owns it. China owns what? Like 3 trillion or something like that? There's 27 trillion. We know the Fed owns about, 6 trillion. 15.5 trillion is owned by the public. So like in the form of what? They hold treasuries, right? So like if that's so bad, you say, I'll take all that debt off their hands. I'll take all those treasuries if they're not happy with it. Just give it to me. Because it's an asset. Who owns the debt? That's an asset. Like, there's no other way to explain it. And that's not twisting anything. That's just reality. It's an asset. So when someone says we got 27 trillion in debt, you just say, well, who owns the debt? Then first of all, they're not going to be able to answer you. They're going to be like stumped by that. They're going to be baffled. They're going to be confused. They're not going to know. Maybe they'll say China. Maybe they'll say the Fed. All right, the Fed is part of the government, and then, you don't want to get into that because you're not going to convince them. But, all the members, all the executives of the Fed, the FOMC, the board members, they're nominated by the president. They have to be confirmed by Congress. The Fed has to turn over all of its profits to the Treasury with the exception of what it needs to run every year. So like the Fed makes $100 billion a year on its assets. It basically turns over 96% of that, 96 billion to the Treasury, keeps 4 billion to operate. I mean, no, all-powerful, omniscient, secretive, incredibly manipulative institution would be in a situation like that where it has to turn over all its money. Like this big, powerful Fed that controls the whole world, right? Got to turn over its money to the Treasury every year. Come on. That's just silly. That's stupid. So yeah, savings went through the roof because of deficit spending. I mean, it's logical. Think about it. When the government spends more than it takes away from us in taxes, it fills up our bank accounts. That's where the savings come from. That's the only place it could come from. That is the only place that it can come from. It can't come from anywhere else. Not China, not us, not going to restaurants and movie theaters. It can't come from outer space. That's the only place it could come from. And so at the same time, a corollary to that is this whole thing with loanable funds, that if the government, borrows, what they mean by borrowing, which is bullshit. I mean, spending more than they take away in taxes. There's plenty of loanable funds. I mean, it has nothing to do. You can't run out. You can't run out. And it adds to the balance of the non-government. It adds to it has to. You're putting in more than you're taking away. All right? All right, everybody. I'll see. Next week's going to be crazy, man. I can't wait. I'll see you. Have a great weekend. Bye.